Hello Year 5 and welcome to the next lesson in our Computers Around Us topic, and today we're going to be looking at inputs and outputs. In fact, our learning intention is to identify inputs and outputs on a computer. Now, really important, when we think about inputs, the key part is the start of that word in. Okay, and when we think about outputs, the key part of that is out. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit more about why they're important bits, but in and out are going to be really important in today's lesson. So, computers can only interact with the world if they are connected to an input or an output device. So these are things that we can connect to computers. These devices allow them to respond to the world around them and to act accordingly to their programming. So they help the computer to be able to do the right things following their instructions. The computer can be programmed to respond to input devices like sensors. Okay, now right now I'm talking to an input device because I'm talking to a camera. That camera is taking my image and putting it into the computer. That's why input, it takes some information, puts it in the computer. In this case, the information is my camera taking in the image. I've also got a microphone, and the microphone is taking in the sound and putting it into the computer. So that's an input device. Okay, you are looking at a screen. Now a screen isn't taking information in, it's giving information out. So that's an output, it's giving information out. It's playing the video and that video is appearing on the screen and you are reading it. The information is going out of the computer. It's an output. Likewise, you can hear me. So you've either got some headphones on or some speakers, and those speakers are outputting my sound. So that's an output device. The speakers are an output device. Okay. So if we think about a water heater, sensors are used to react to a drop in temperature. So in your house, when it goes below a certain temperature, you'll have a thermostat somewhere in your house that's measuring the temperature. That temperature measurement is an input. It's measuring the temperature in your house, and once that number goes below a certain value, it tells your heating to turn on to heat up the house. So the input, the measurement of the temperature, is used so the program can respond in the right way. We don't want our heating to come on when it's really, really hot. So we've got a sensor, an input that checks what the temperature is. Also, if it gets really, really cold, we do want our heating to come on. And that sensor does the same job, make sure that it comes on at an appropriate time. So, most computers are going to have some sort of input or output. You might have something in your home to control your lights. For example, in school, we've got motion sensors. So the lights turn off when there's no motion in the room. When there's nobody in the room, the lights go off. When somebody walks into the room, the motion sensors detect there's someone in the room, so the lights come on. It's a really clever way of saving a bit of energy. So these sensors are part of a computerized system. The input is their movement. If the answer is yes, turn on the lights. That's the program. Traffic lights are another example. They might see, has somebody touched the button so I can cross the road? They might have a sensor for cars to see if there's a car approaching or is there a car waiting. And they change their pattern appropriately. If they know there's somebody waiting at the traffic lights, they're going to change the lights to red so they can cross over. But if there's nobody waiting, there's no point changing. So they use that input button to know whether they need to change their program or not.
Input and output devices. Input devices are things that put information into a computer. So, things like a keyboard, a mouse, a microphone, or a webcam. Then there are output devices that feed information out of a computer, like speakers, a monitor, or a printer. But how do input devices communicate with output devices? Well, all information on computers has to be digitised. That means numerical data. So all forms of information, images, text, sounds, are converted into a single binary code. This data, for example, represents the question, do you want sprouts with that? Which turned out to be a terrible idea for selling donuts. It was input by typing on a keyboard, sent as numerical data in an email, output on screen, and printed via a printer, and then shredded. Or he could have input it using a wireless keyboard. Wireless devices communicate using radio waves. When they get close enough, they have a conversation to work out how they're going to interact with each other. The screen of a smartphone or tablet computer is an input and output device. You input on the screen through touch, and it outputs through graphics. Sound's an output too. Fetch! But that's through the speakers. Once you know about input and output devices, you start to recognise them everywhere. Good dog! There are other input devices that can track and respond to your voice, gestures, or movements and give you helpful feedback and encouragement. We hope you've enjoyed this output. Thank you for your input.
Okay, so you've just watched that video. Now, here is a task I'd like to do following that video. You might want to rewind and rewatch the video once you know what the task is, but I want you to watch it once anyway. So I want you to summarise the video in 100 words. So you've got 100 words to tell me what that video was all about. Okay, the key information is what I want. So I want a short bit of writing just to tell me what that video was all about. And I've given you some key vocab here. You've got input and output. Now you're going to need those words. They're going to be really important. You've also got monitor, so what we might call a screen as well as a monitor, computer or device. We've got digital, wireless, and information. So you might want to use some or all of those words when you summarize the video. But as I say, you're going to might want to rewind and rewatch that video now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pause for a minute to give you guys a chance to do it. I'll leave this on screen, and obviously you can pause the video while you do this task as well. Okay, so hopefully you've had enough time to do that now. If not, pause the video and we'll carry on when you are ready. So here we've got another task I'd like to have a go at, which is looking at the labels below. I want you to sort out the input and the output devices. So just a reminder, input is something you connect to a computer that sends information in to the computer, and output device is something you connect that gives information sent to it from the computer and gives out the information to the person using it. So we've got webcam, monitor, speaker, keyboard, digital camera, interactive whiteboard, and printer. Now, you should have two lists, one of inputs, one of outputs, but I will warn you, some items could be on both lists. So again, I'm going to give you a minute to complete this task. Two lists, inputs, outputs, and see if you can sort all of those devices that are labelled into those lists. Okay, I'm going to move on, but again, if you need to pause the video to get the last bit done, do so now before I show you the answers. Okay, inputs. So the inputs we had were webcam. So usually a webcam is actually a two-in-one device where you've got both the camera and the microphone, and they are both inputs. Camera takes the picture in, microphone takes the sound in. You've got the keyboard. Keyboard is an input device that sends information about what keys you've pressed. It's received by the computer and displays that letter or number on the screen. So when you're typing away, you're putting information into the computer. Digital camera, a little bit like a webcam. When you connect it up to the computer, you send the pictures to the computer, it becomes an input device. For outputs, you've got printer. So it takes the image on screen, the document on screen, sends the information out of the computer to the printer that's able to then put it on paper. We've got speakers. So speakers send sound out of the computer. So the sound is sent from the computer to the speakers and then you hear it. Then you've got monitors, and a monitor is an output device because it shows you the image on the screen, gives you the information, sends out the image so you can see it. On both, you might have the interactive whiteboard. So interactive whiteboard is an input device that sends information out in. When you touch the screen, you're putting the information in. So I say I want to move the mouse to here. I touch the screen and it moves the mouse, but it sends it out because often the image is projected onto it as well. So it's a bit of both. So you might put that one in both lists. So how does an input make an output? How are they connected? So a computer sits in the middle. You have inputs that go in and outputs that come out. A computer program processes and digitizes the input information. The result is then sent out as an output device, such as a screen. So for example, me right now. Right now, I'm being captured by this camera. The information is being captured by the camera and it's sent into the computer. And the computer digitizes this image. So it takes my image and it makes it into binary, ones and zeros. And then it converts that binary and it puts it onto the screen. So you can see me right now. So that's what's happening, is the camera is being turned, the signal from the camera is being turned into the picture on the screen by the computer. Input camera, digitized by the computer, output on the screen. So let's think about some examples. If we look at a DVD player, when you click play on the remote control, it's an input device. Remote control, input device. You're giving some information to the computer, what you want it to do. It digitizes the input and sends the information through the DVD player. The computer inside the DVD player processes this input information and works out what it needs to do. It will start to read the DVD. The video and audio information from the DVD is then sent to the TV and the speakers, and you can see it on screen and hear it as well. So your press play was the input, and the DVD follows the instructions. The DVD player follows those instructions to make the film appear on your TV. Or a games console, for another example. You're playing a game and you're using the controller to push a button or push the control stick to move a character. These inputs are digitized, so when you press that button it sends a signal to your games console. The games console then follows its program to say, what do I need to do when I receive this signal? So I've had this input, what do I do? And then it does the corresponding output. So if you've pressed the jump button, for example, your character will jump and you'll see that on screen. You'll hear the sound effect for it. Okay, here's what I want you to do for today's lesson. You should have already done the bronze, which was to summarize the video in 100 words. Silver, list input and output devices for a desktop, PC or laptop. We did that together, but you might have some more that you can think of. Gold is another list of input and output devices, but this time for a smartphone or tablet, and that's a bit trickier. You have to think carefully about that one. Challenge, list input and output devices that you can find in your own home. So think about, what have you got around your house that is an input and output? There are loads. Just like there were last week, there are loads of computers, there are loads of input and output devices, so think carefully. You may need to go on a little hunt for these. So vocab, we've got input, output, computer, device, wireless and information. Okay guys, you are going to be in the pit for some of these, but I know you've got all the skills to get out. Best of luck.